Everyone, it's Thursday again. One of those weeks back around again. It's been a very good week here at Stone Stitches. We've been extraordinarily busy, but I think productive busy rather than just busy. So it's nice to see you all again here. You may see a little bit of the sneaking peek of what I want to talk about here today. I gave a little hint last week when we were talking about the fact that we are almost ready to go live with our knit along for the autumn season. It really kind of kickstarts the autumn for me when we get to go and do the knit along, because it's kind of the most longest standing knit along that I've been doing. I started it off several years ago when I was beginning, first of all, and we were doing it with other yarn companies. And then gradually, over the last couple of years, as I built up my own yarn line, we began introducing Nua for the knit along. So this year, we're using Nua worsted. And you can see the corner of the sweater here, it is in Dare You. So it's when I'm asked to describe my colors, it's actually quite difficult because it is a red, but it's a very deep, rich red is probably the best way to put it. So hopefully it's showing up pretty well here in the corner, but it's a deep red is probably the way I describe it, I think, really. It does make it difficult to photograph because it looks a little different in each light. Anyone who has attempted to photograph colors will also know that red is a particularly tricky one. It just kind of defies photography. It's not very good to be able to photograph it, but we did our best. I went out with Joe last weekend. We were on to a local beach, so you've been seeing a few of the photographs and the reels over the last couple of days. It was of us on the trip down there. There's one of the most fantastic little causeways on the way out, and it's just a really beautiful area. And the beach itself, it's not a very good one for going if you want to go swimming, because when the tide goes out, which it seems to be every time I'm there, it's really far out. So very good for photography because it's long, straight stretch where you can actually walk up and down, but you're not necessarily in the water. Oh, I see a few questions coming in here. I will be sure to give you kind of a little bit more details on the sweater as we're going through. But I probably will talk first about knit-alongs. If you've done a knit-along with me before, you'll know kind of what's involved and how we put the whole thing together. But if you're new to knit-alongs can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes for designers, it might be a matter of having existing patterns and people are just knitting at the same time and giving each other support. The way I run knit-alongs, they're for new patterns, and they're all done where it's got a huge amount of support going along with each section of the pattern, released a clue at a time, so you won't know what section is coming out for that pattern until it comes out. And then when that section comes out, we also release videos for that section, so that if there's new techniques, or you want to know how I've done it when I was working through it, you'll have videos that go all the way along with it. That's why the pricing of our knit-alongs is slightly higher than just the pattern alone when it comes out, first of all, because it comes with the full workshop. It only comes with the workshop until the point where the knit-along is over, and then the workshop, if you've already purchased it and you've put the workshop in your library, you keep it forever, it is yours. But if you come and buy the pattern afterwards, then the workshop is an entirely separate purchase. So you're getting two for the price of one, really, with the knit-along pattern as we're going through it. We've also got the forum, the Knit Hub forum, where you can come and you can chat with other knitters. And like, I'm usually here on Instagram whenever we release a pattern every week. So if there's particular questions that are coming up or stuff you want to ask me, you can ask. So that's all of the, I suppose, the housekeeping in relation to how knit-alongs work. So now it's time for the fun part, which is the sweater. So I'm going to move back and I'm going to move Hawthorn in front of you. So this is Hawthorn. It is a bottom up. Let me turn her to the side first of all. It's a bottom up sweater where parts of it are knit flat, because down it starts at the, let me move this out of the way. It starts at the bottom where you've got a split hem. So you've got flat all the way up from here on each side. The front section begins with mistake rib, which I actually really love because it looks like rib, but it's just got a little bit more interest going on. So it's like garter stitch in the middle, and then the knit stitches columns stay the same. And that stays all the way up to the top here. You keep that just a little mistake panel going. But what happens after you go past that first section on the bottom is it turns into sand stitch. Now, Elsa Louise, you were asking a little bit about sand stitch. Sand stitch is like an elongated seed stitch is the way I think of it. So, you know, with seed stitch, you'll have kind of knit, purl, and then it reverses on the other side so that it's alternating back and forth. With sand stitch, you've also got a stockinette stitch row in between each of those. So it's like elongated moss stitch is the way I think of it, really, is probably the best way I can think of describing it. So elongated out, but similar to moss stitch is what sand stitch is like. The reason it's a particularly good match on this is the mistake rib, you've got like the knit, purl in the middle here with the knit, and then that middle section keeps going up. So it's a very natural continuation from one stitch pattern to another. So they flow and blend really nicely together. And it's also why even on the side here, when you stand back, you can see it. But when you're up very close, it's not very obvious in your face ribbing on the side. But by actually having those little bits of ribbing up along there, what it allows me to do on the back here is, when you divide for the armhole, you do the back section first of all, and you can probably see here that ribbing decreases very quickly across on each side. So it creates a very sharp decrease across the shoulder. So the shoulder is angled very sharply here. But then what happens in the front is your front goes much longer and folds over the back. So the top of your shoulder is back over here, but when you're actually working on it, the top of the sleeve is here. So it's a detail that I've been looking at in sweaters for ages, and I love the way it looked. And I kept trying to figure out how I'm supposed to wrap my head around the construction of it and how to fit it into a garment design. And it took me a while to figure it out. And eventually it did mean that I had to put one seam in. I don't usually do seams, but to create this end effect, it really was the most straightforward way of doing it. Because if you're doing the back and you're decreasing all the way along here, all you have left at the top is the middle of the shoulder stitches. But that means that your shoulder itself is just going to need a seam. So then the front folds back and you do have one seam along here. It is short, it's just a few inches on each side, and I give lots of details on how to do mattress stitch. So do not be afraid if you're not crazy about seam stitches. I think, where is it, Elsa Louise, you were asking me what the shoulder type is, and it's a drop shoulder, but it's a little bit different because of the fact that you do have quite a steep slope there, and there's a little bit of shoulder decreases here, so it's primarily drop shoulder, but a little bit different. I'm not even sure if I'm probably best off calling it like a modified drop shoulder, I suppose, because there is a little bit of decreases here to bring it in a small bit at the underarm, and then you do have those severe decreases at the top, which are going to slope the shoulder. So the combination of the two give a slightly different effect, but it really is still drop shoulder because the edge of it sits out here, so it's a bit further down. And what I also did was, I'll make sure I turn to the camera, the sleeve itself is pretty generous at the top, and that was deliberate because I wanted, the sweater has a couple of extra inches of ease, which means that I felt that having more ease in the upper arm gives it just overall a much more relaxed feel. But I did bring the stitch count down and give a nice well-fitted cuff here with the ribbing. So you drop down for the ribbing itself and it gives a snugger cuff. Not tight, but just enough so that it's not going to slide down and it still fits. But the top part is kind of, it's wider, comfortable, is kind of the best way to put it. Hey Liz, you're excited to do the first knit along. You have the pattern and the kit in Harvest Moon. Excellent. It's going to be lovely in Harvest Moon. I've actually got that on the table here. This is Harvest Moon for anyone who's interested. That is kind of a very rich orangey colour. Really good one, I think, for the autumn. It's very autumnal, shall I say. Let me flick through, make sure there's no more questions. If you have any other questions kind of on how it's put together, just give me a shout as well. How long is it? It looks almost like a tunic. No, I think part of that is that this is sitting way above my head. It's actually pretty, it sits, like the bottom part divides here and then it just comes down here. So definitely not a tunic. Like I think the body was about 15 inches from here down, and then the top part is a little deeper. but no, not a tunic, more like a generous sweater length is the way I would put it. And else Louise, so the sleeve is knit top down. Yes, the sleeve is knit from the top down. You're picking the stitches up around here and just doing a standard decrease down there. So yes, top down for the sleeves. I'm trying to, I should show you here. Let me pull up. This is the Dare You color on a skein, which is the one that I knitted with. Anyone who hasn't come across new worsted before, it's a mix of merino, yak and linen. So you can see all the flecks running through that different color. That is the linen, because linen dyes up differently. When the dye hits linen, because it's a plant fiber rather than animal fiber, it doesn't absorb as much dye, and so it stays flecked more lightly and kind of looks tweedy is the best way of putting it. And the yak in it, there's the yak is going to be a little bit thicker. God, Elsa Louise, can I model it for you? I can. The only problem is I have got a speaker on, so I'll probably I'll stop talking while I've got it on me, because you're not going to be able to see it. Laura's running up the stairs. Laura, do you want to wear it? All right, let me pull this off and move her out of the way. One other question that I had actually over the last couple of hours was the neck. I've got, obviously, the one I made has a cowl neck. I have in the pattern the option for a crew neck. So just, you know, it's going to start off the same way, but you'll just work for an inch rather than the several inches of the cowl. So it'll end along here. It's going to be, I've got details in the pattern as to how much less you will have on the page. It's going to be, I think it was about 68 yards less if you did a cowl neck. So the bones of a skein if you're going to leave the cowl neck out. Can I describe how warm the yarn is compared to 100% wool? I'd say it's pretty similar to wool yarn. There wouldn't be any difference, I think, in the warmth of it. All right, so excuse the muffled covering of the mic for a second, but I can show you the length. Here we go. Pull the mic out, stick it on the edge. Here we go. Yeah, it's a little warm for this weather here, but so the cowl of it, you can see here, you can kind of hold it up. You could probably fold it down. My preference tends to be kind of keep it slouchy. Now, in relation to the length, let me turn this down a bit and move back. So you can see it's definitely not tunic length. The split comes to just about my jeans and the front is just about here. I think it's pretty standard sweater length, to be honest with you. It does take a fairly decent amount of yarn with a combination of the cowl, few inches of extra ease, and the fact that the sleeves have got a little bit more generosity as well. It is an immensely comfy sweater. I mean, that's the best way to put it. You know the way there's certain sweaters and you just know that you would live in them for the winter? I suspect this kind of falls into that category, because both Nadia and Laura have actually been trying the sweater on when I was testing it out, and I think both of them separately are deciding their colors and which ones they're going to get started with. But it was, yeah, it is kind of a live-in sweater is the best way to put it. So let me show you here. So you can see where the neck is here, and if you've got a crew neck, you'll just have a little bit shorter. Liz, it's gorgeous, and the yarn's very warm and cozy, super soft too. You've 3 garments knitted, and it's your favorite yarn. Oh, delighted to hear that. It's a lovely, lovely yarn. And I mean, obviously there's both the sport and the worsted weight. Worsted weight is going to be better for winter because it is going to be a bit warmer. Monica, you're taller, so you generally buy a larger kit. Perfect. Yeah, and this one as well, you know, you're knitting from the bottom up, so like you can see the length that it's at here and see the length you want it to be. I'm 5'6", so hopefully that will give you kind of a feel for what it's going to look like on you. I do end up being, I've got a longer torso, so I tend to veer towards slightly longer sweaters or longer lengths as well, rather than having them too short. Let me pull up a bunch of the different colors here. Some of the kits that we've got up, we can't put all of the colors up. into our kits. So if there's a particular color that you'd really like to try out and it's not in one of the kits, just let us know and we can swap the colors out for you. That's no problem at all. Because the kit prices until the 15th of December, when you get the pattern and the yarn together, you will have the option to add it as a bundle, which will give you 10% off both of them together. So because there's a good bit of yarn, it's a fairly sizable discount. So here's a lighter green. This is drift glass. If you prefer darker green, this is the same one that we had the Lhasa cardigan in a few months ago. That's Sea Veggies. If you're more of a blue person, this is Late Night Blues, which I think is kind of like a deep indigo denim. And this is the faded denim version. It's Unexpected Macaw. If you like much brighter, we have Cafe Flamingo here. And then at the darker end, there's August Storms and Koppel, which is kind of on the browner end. But again, with the light white flecks, it kind of looks a little bit different. I think, who was it? Else Louise, you're going to use your Hatter's Teal. Oh, that'd be lovely in Hatter's Teal. Hatter's Teal, I do not have here now, of course. I don't think we ended up putting in the kits, but it's a very bright blue. It's a beautiful color. It was out of stock for a long time, but it is back in stock now. If anyone else has any questions there in relation to it, just kind of pop them up. I'm very happy to answer them. So if you've done knit-alongs with me before, you're probably going to actually find it kind of interesting doing something with the seam in it, because of the fact that that's something I generally completely avoid. And I think that's part of what even held me off on doing the shoulder construction, because I kind of kept looking around to see if there was other ways of doing it. But it actually ended up being the most straightforward and the easiest way of doing this particular construction, because that way you get this fun shoulder detail where this is all done with decreases, but by pulling this over, you actually will end up just having joined from here up to the top here. Elsa Louise, are the front and the back the same length? Yes, they're exactly the same length. You can, of course, it wouldn't be any difficulty if you wanted to go and add an extra inch to the back, or usually it's the back if people are going to lengthen it, but I did knit them the same length for the sample. Linda, what's the fabric content? The fabric content of Nua is merino, 60% merino, 20% yak, and 20% linen. So the linen has got is where the little white flecks come in, because it dyes up differently. Yak is super soft. So if you've knit anything with yak before, you'll know that it's kind of similar to cashmere, that real silky smoothness to it. So it gives it an awful lot of softness, really, is the best way of putting it. Yeah, I almost am wishing for colder weather so I could just leave the sweater on and wear it for the rest of the day. Yeah, I think definitely going to be a go-to sweater for the winter. I was actually sitting downstairs as well and wondering, this is, you could possibly, Blosta might also be another option for knitting this. It's going to be a little bit more rustic, obviously, but I'd say the texture should work pretty well in Blosta as well. Elsa Louise, it's lovely to knit with. Thank you, I'm glad you like it. All right, everyone, I think that's probably it. I was going to say we just got about 7 boxes of Nua worsted downstairs. So if you order the kits, they will be going out as the orders come in. We're going to be shipping the kits out, so it should be pretty fast delivery. The pattern itself, the first clue is coming out at the end of September. I think it's the 22nd of September, but all that information would be in the actual knit-along kit. But what that means is you've got several weeks for the yarn to arrive. So if you're international and it takes a little bit longer to get here, you don't need to worry. It will come very quickly. Monica, you're ordering today. Excellent. You should definitely get it in time now. That's why we have the window for the pre-order, or not for the early ordering of the kits, so that as many people as possible will have a chance to actually get your yarn in your hands in order to get started for the knit-along. When you do get your yarn and you're getting started, the first thing you're going to do is just start swatching, and then from there figure out your sizing and what size you want it to make it. So actually I should probably say this size is the 40-inch size, so I think it's probably about 5 inches positive V's and probably around a 35-inch bust. I say around because it varies between 34.5 and 35 and a bit, depending on what I'm wearing underneath, but around about 5 inches of positive ease, which feels right for me with this. I don't think I'd want it much less than that, or much more, kind of as a nice little in the middle of the road. Jonah, you love the texture. Thank you. It feels good to, and actually it's quite pleasant to knit because you do have plain knit rows in it as well. It takes forever to get to Canada. Yeah, Canada is a bit of hit and miss. Sometimes things get really kind of fly through really quickly, and other times customs will suddenly decide that they have to take a really close look at your wool because it's very interesting to them apparently. But they do get there, but a month should give you enough time, I think, if you order quickly, to be able to get it out the door. If you're on my newsletter, you'll get a newsletter later on this evening with a bit more details and links for ordering, so keep an eye out for that. Or if you can't wait, then just jump onto the website, Stolen Stitches. Monica, you get it fast in the US. Yeah, I know there's a huge difference between US and Canadian shipping times. Canada is a little bit more sparsely populated, so I suspect that it's just going to take a bit longer to move around, where there's probably a more substantial infrastructure in the US, so stuff gets there bizarrely quickly. Like, it gets much faster to my US addresses than it does to European ones, which never ceases to amaze me. I'm grateful, but it's quite astonishing actually. So US Postal Service really is top notch, I have to say. Most of the time, outside Christmas, we'd avoid Christmas, but the rest of the time, it's super. All right, I think that I am going to say goodbye for real now. Again, if you have any questions and you're watching this afterwards, just jump on and I will answer the questions as they come in the comments. So thank you for joining me today. Bye everyone.